Hi, I'm Matt Black from Coldcut Ninja Tune, welcoming you to this BPM workshop here in Tel Aviv.
ערב טוב לכולם, אני נועם, לא יודע כמה מכם מכירים אותי, אני קורא ב-BPM בעברי, הבנתי את הקורס די-ג'יי. מאט בלאק נמצא איתנו היום, חצי מהצמד Coldcut, המייסדים של נינג'ה טיון, אחד מהלייבלים הכי טובים לטעמי שקיימים היום. מאט בא לעשות פה סדנה יותר מעשית, הוא יראה לנו את האפליקציה שהוא פיתח שנקראת נינג'ה ג'ם, אתם תעשו איתו איזושהי אינטראקציה מוזיקלית מה שנקרא. וזהו, אז בואו ניתן לו את הבמה, מאט בלאק.
Thank you. I haven't actually done anything quite like this before, so you have to bear with me. I haven't got any notes, but we'll just make it up as we go along. But I've got quite a clear idea of what I want to do with you guys. Thank you all for turning up, by the way. It's great to have a full house, and it's great to be here at such a good establishment as BPM College. Nice to see how electronic music has become a big part of our popular culture. So thanks all for paying attention and being here. I'm going to speak a little bit about the background of Coldcut, which is my group, and Ninja Tune in electronic music, and how that fed into the project which I want to showcase today, which is Ninja Jam, our app for iPhone and iOS. But the main thrust of today's session is going to be around the app, explaining the concept behind it, but also I want us to actually work together to make a piece of musical content for the app. And I'll show you as things develop exactly what that means. But basically, we're going to collaborate together to make an interactive tune pack for Ninja Jam using samples that we gathered together today and from all over the place. So that's what I want to spend most of the time on. But I will spend a little bit of time talking about what my path has been that's led me to be here today. I'm sure there's probably some Ninja Tune fans in the house, and if you want to grab me later, perhaps any particular questions about that, then I think it'd be best to leave that till after the main session. So I think we'll have an intro. I'll describe Ninja Jam, then we'll have a bit of a break, we'll get into the sample making thing, and then we'll convene after that. That's the basic plan for the next couple of hours. So, what am I doing here? Well, I've been working in electronic music for 27 years with my partner Jonathan Moore as part of Coldcut. Before that, as a child, I was always interested in science and science fiction and electronics. I started messing around with DJing equipment and synthesizers when I was a boy. That was in the mid-70s. And I got onto computers around the same time in the mid-70s. And I was always interested in the idea that computers would be the wave of the future and could be used for creative purposes and having fun. So I always liked music, and I used to mess around with an old reel-to-reel tape deck that my uncle gave me and wire up sort of buzzers and bulbs and electrical bits and pieces and charge my family a half penny to come in and see the show with the lights turned off and all these lights flashing and buzzers. And my mum said, oh, it's a sound and light show. So I thought, yeah, that sounds good. And I've sort of made a career out of that. Later on at school, some friends of mine and me, we had a little geeky posse, and we started doing a radio station at school. And we found some equipment one day outside the youth club that was being thrown out, a couple of turntables and an amplifier, and we thought, oh, what's that? That looks interesting. And the tutor said, well, you can have that for £5 if you want. So we said, yeah, nice one. So we took that bit of equipment and we started using it to do school discos. And just using cassettes, actually, because we couldn't really... Had a few records, but mainly we just record stuff on the radio and then play it at the disco. Had a few vinyls. And made some flashing lights and even a stroboscope out of an electronic music magazine. And I was also building a synthesizer with my friend Aidan, who found this design again in an electronic magazine. We decided it'd be good to have a go at building our own synth. So we did that. Later on I was at college and I fell in with a group of friends. And to be honest, we didn't do too much studying. It was more like getting stoned, having parties, and listening to music. And there was all these great records coming over from the States This was the beginning of hip hop, around about 1980, and there were these scratch records by people like Grandmaster Flash. And we got these records and thought, like, how the fuck are they making those? This is amazing. And tried to sort of reverse engineer the techniques that we used to make those records. Now, in those days, there was no BPM colleges, there was no learn how to scratch DVD. We just had to find little bits on the TV or go to shows and catch whatever information we could and work out how to do it ourselves. Around the mid-80s, I got my first turntables. I encountered the Wild Bunch in Bristol, which included Nelly Hooper and DJ Mushroom. They later became Massive Attack. And those guys already really knew what they were doing. They were doing amazing graffiti and cutting up stuff on turntables, quite a way ahead of London, actually. So that inspired me to get my own decks. I also got my first kind of little sequencer and drum machine at that time, and started trying to combine all these techniques together, and very much inspired by the records and the vibes that were coming out of the States, but wanting to do something in our own style. So around 1987, I've joined forces with Jonathan, and we put out a record called Say Kids, What Time Is It?, which was entirely made of fragments of other people's records, scratched and mixed together, just using a 4-track cassette and just turntables and a cassette tape to build a kind of musical collage. And this proved really popular. In London, we made a record, made 500 copies, started selling it around the shops there, and that was how Coldcut started. And pretty soon after that, I started being able to afford a bit more in the way of electronic toys. We got our first Atari, which was our first sequencing computer with Creator on it, which became Logic many years down the line. Our Casio sampler, the cheapest one you could get. And started taking the techniques of DJing, but applying electronic instruments to cut and paste, to make records. And this was kind of at the start of the wave of DJs making records and sort of riding the electronic music craze, which was gathering speed at that time. It was also when house music first came on the scene. Now, because I've been a computer programmer, I was always interested in seeing what else could be done with computers, because you can have hardware, dedicated pieces of hardware, but they don't always do what you want. Whereas with a computer, you can write a program and pretty much get the computer to do anything that you wanted. And so I started making simple programs on the Amiga to mash up visuals. And I met a bunch of guys, a couple of guys called Rob Pepperell and Miles Visman, who'd been at art college, and they were also computer programmers. And we joined forces to create a sort of joint company called Hex as a research lab for these kind of ideas. So I don't want to go into the whole history of all that time, but this is just a bit of the background that's formed my interests into using technology in creative ways, and which has led on to Ninja Jam. So in the 90s and during the noughties, I was experimenting with applying these ideas to art installations, to making up our own software so that we could do mash-up, cut and paste DJ shows using visuals and sound. One of the programs we made was called VJam, and we also made up bits of hardware so that we could cut and scratch audiovisual material like a DJ scratches records. And we made another program called DJam, which was pretty much the same thing as what I'm going to show you with Ninja Jam. It was a 4-track clip mixer that would let you load in your own loops and then chop them up, rearrange them, and layer them using a PC. So these were early ideas for ways in which computers could be used to DJ. And it's kind of, our career's really been a mixture of DJing, which is playing other people's music off pieces of vinyl initially, and then the studio techniques where you also have mixers and a lot of the same technology, but it's about creating music from scratch. Remixing kind of comes in the middle, so you take a track that's already been made and then you add additional elements to that, and sometimes you can end up with something completely different. The original kind of dance mixes tended to be just heavying up the kick drum and maybe editing the longer percussion breaks in these New York disco records. Sal Soul is one of the key labels for that. and people like Walter Gibbons were known for their edits and remixes. But it was only later, with the advent of sampling and the possibility to take tracks in a much more radical direction, that remixing really took off. And people often mention a Coldcut remix which we did, which was paid in full, for Eric B. and Rakim, which used the wonderful voice of Ofra Hazar from Israel as its kind of key hook. And that was a good one. And I think people have often told me that, wow, that record really opened up what could be done with remixing. And so, to me, there's no actual hard and fast difference between playing a track, messing around as a DJ does. I often say a disc jockey plays records, a DJ plays with records. A scratch DJ plays with records, combines 2 records at the same time, or even 3 or 4 turntables, whisks records on and off to create a collage, to create something new from existing samples. But then you can bring in a drum machine, you could bring in a vocalist, a beatboxer, you could bring in someone playing keyboards on top. You can add in all these extra elements. You might end up with a remix, or you might end up with nothing left of the original track. You end up with something completely new. So there's a continuous spectrum for me, from DJing to remixing to music production. And I guess pretty much people are familiar with these ideas now, and at BPM College, I guess you cover all those aspects of electronic music. There's simply really a series of attitudes to playing around with sound and making stuff. So during the noughties, I made this program DJam, and I even got a deal with Steinberg to develop it. But for various reasons, I wasn't able to finish it. And often programmers, cool software can be developed by sort of one person in their bedroom. It does happen, and I've always been very fond of that kind of idea. But often nowadays, it's about big teams of coders putting in years of effort to create things. I mean, something like Grand Theft Auto is 5 years' work for a team of 50 people, I think, and cost millions of dollars. But I've always liked the idea that actually it's possible to do things in a much more punk, low-budget way. And we did that with DJam, but it didn't quite work out. But I thought the idea was good. And when Apple launched the iPhone, and more importantly, the App Store, I kind of lit up and thought, well, here is a way where we can make something for a new type of device and distribute it to a larger audience. So in the past, it was very, very difficult. The same thing applied absolutely to music, to get your product, whether it was music or software, into the hands of people around the world. You needed to have a distributor. You needed to press, ideally, thousands of copies. You needed advertising budgets before a shop would even stock your product. There was always a great bottleneck preventing most people from getting their stuff out there to the public. Now that's all changed, because the internet allows us to distribute whatever we're doing, whether it's a blog or a piece of music or a photograph or a piece of software, right around the world, if, and it's a big if, you can get anyone to pay attention. Because everyone's doing this now, so there's all this information out there clamoring for our attention. How do you get noticed? Well, that is a big question. But it is a great thing, I believe, that the monopoly on not only distribution but production of electronic music has been broken, and that we can all have a go at that now. I mean, I'm sure anyone who's got a computer probably has sitting on it, same as me, software like Ableton or whatever it is you use, and plugins, effects, synths, things that if you bought them in hardware would have cost you hundreds of thousands of pounds a few years ago, even if you had a studio big enough to get them all into and could work out how to wire them all up. So I think it's a great thing that creative possibility is available to a much larger number of people nowadays. And that's, I guess, why we're here. So when Apple got this thing rolling out, and they provided a new system whereby anyone could make an app, a piece of software, and distribute it to people, and they could get it onto their phones, their devices, and use it. And I'm not an evangelist for Apple. I always think that as a company, they're no different to Microsoft or any of these large corporations. But I do like these touchscreen devices. I think they're interesting, enjoyable interfaces for doing all kinds of stuff. And as I say, having broken the distribution bottleneck and letting me and anyone else have a chance to get our stuff out to the world is a really great thing. So April last year was when we launched Ninja Jam, and it took a couple of years' work before then to develop the software. It's written, the core of it is written using a program called Pure Data, which is a free version of Max MSP, which some of you may know. It's a brilliant kind of, it's like a Lego kit for building electronic music circuits. And lots of people make their own instruments and effects using that. Pure Data is the same. But the nice thing about Pure Data is you can write a patch for it, whether it's for a synth or an effects unit or something like Ninja Jam, wrap it in the front end and get it out as an app for iOS. Also even for Android and Linux, but that's another story. That's not quite so easy, but that's how we did the core of this engine. And working with a company called SEPA in London, sort of arts and technology collective. I met the boss of SEPA, this guy Evan Grant, and we had a common vision for wanting to do something creative in the music app space. So we worked together to create Ninja Jam. It was quite a difficult path actually, and thanks to my wife there for helping me get that project back on track after I had rather fell out with SEPA, but we became all friends again, and the end result is Ninja Jam. So the point of Ninja Jam, the vision of Ninja Jam is to create an app that lets anyone experience the enjoyment and excitement of playing with electronic music and electronic sound. We could call it a remixing app because it's based on remixing Ninja Tune music. That's the basic concept. We thought this would be a good way to introduce people to the concept, would be to give them something that they already know, i.e. Ninja Tune music from established artists like Bonobo, DJ Food, Amon Tobin, who records his two fingers, Mr. Scruff, people like that. So I'm going to briefly take you through the Ninja Jam program, and that will lead on to seeing how we can actually make some content for the app ourselves. So yeah, I guess I'll spend like 10, 15 minutes or so going through the functions of the app so that you can see where I'm coming from. So this is what we call the store. And in the store is where you select and indeed buy the content for the app. So we can swipe through these different pages. And I've got all the packs at the moment, but if you just loaded this app, and I would say please do check out, there's a little card here, a flyer for Ninja Jam on the tables. And if you have an iOS device, please do grab it from the App Store. It would be good to get it now, or it's free. Yes, I should say quickly. It is free, good point. And it comes with some free content as well. The pack that it comes with is our one, Coldcut Beats and Pieces. And then these other packs, there are quite often some free ones. I think Toddler Tea is free as well. Basically, when you open the app, this will come up in the store, and each of these packs will have a little price, which I don't know what it is in shekels, but in the UK it's 69p. So it's actually less than a tune on iTunes, an MP3 on iTunes store, so pretty reasonable. But there's also free packs available for it as well. So I'm not just being a salesman here, but I want to show you how it works. So I'm going to select one of these packs, and let's have old Emeka. So here we have some blurb, information about the pack, and we'll make up some suitable blurb for our BPM college pack when we come to that. And we can also put artwork as well. Pressing play jam, as I've already purchased this. If you purchase it, you just put in your iTunes ID, and then it downloads it from the store, and then you're good to go. So, can you hear me okay over the music? Is that about right? You can all hear me okay? So if I don't do anything, then the track plays it's a slightly simplified version of the original, because what we've done is reduced down the number of clips that we need to recreate this track. So what we've got is 8 drum loops, 8 bass loops, 8 synth loops, and 8 Vox loops. Sometimes we decide we don't need a whole 8 bass lines, so we might include some other ones in there, but that's basically a track broken down into its individual stems, the original elements of the track. So if I work with a Ninja Tune artist like Emeka or Amon, I'll say, yep, give us your stems for that track. And they might give us 4, or they might give us 16, or they might give us 48 individual channels, usually mixed out of Ableton or Logic, all the separate elements that they use. And then we'll kind of submix them down, group them down to 4 basic channels of sound. And the idea is that this way you can interact with the track in a much more powerful, creative way than if you're just playing the track. So it enables you to get into the DNA of the track. So I'm going to walk through the functionality of the app that lets you do that, and so you can see what you can do to each track, break it down to its components. So first off, on the left there, we've got these 4 channels, which are labelled here, drums, bass, synth and Vox. They can actually be called anything. Thank you. And these can be turned on and off with the mutes. Now we're just going to look at the drum channel initially, so that it's clear exactly what's happening. So if you have too much stuff happening, it can be a bit confusing. So basically, clip 1, which is this first red box, is playing for the drums. If I swap to clip 3, that's a different variation that Emeka's programmed in of the drums, a breakdown. Now I can instantly swap between these clips, which is actually a difference from any other software that I'm aware of. Ableton has legato mode, but it doesn't quite work like this. So I can chop between the clips, and it'll always be in time, because I'll cut into each clip at the time it would have reached in its playback. So I'll just demonstrate that. So even just messing around with one drum channel, one can have quite a lot of fun doing that. And one thing we like to do with these packs is give people as much variation as possible to take the tune in different directions. And I know trance is massive in Israel. Any trance heads in the house? No one? Yes, my man. I love trance. I met my wife on the trance scene actually, which is another good thing about it. But to me, I don't really see any difference between all these different types of music. They're more, to coin a phrase, a matter of BPM. You know, the same breaks are used to make jungle and dubstep as are used to make hip hop. They're just used at a different speed. We use a lot of the same techniques, a lot of the same synths, a lot of the same software to make all these different styles of music. And even expanding out of electronic music to styles like reggae and funk, you can get a lot of fun out of mixing the styles together. And this is one of the things I love about the cut and paste technique, is one can just throw in any combinations together, and it's surprising how often combinations work. So rather than just using, this is basically a sort of housey techno track, rather than just using a load of other house techno samples, I think it's fun to bring in different styles of samples. So let's see what else we've got loaded in the drum track. Okay, it's more of a hip-hop style break. can actually look inside each of these samples that's playing. So if I flip this channel into what we call drill mode, you'll see the waveform for the clip that's playing at the moment, one bar scrolling at a time. Firstly, this is quite nice because it's good to have a visual depiction of the audio. And there are a number of ways I've found that seeing sound and music can influence one's way of working with it. When you see in an editor, for instance, MIDI notes on a screen, quite often I won't get into particularly trying to find this one and that one and decide what to take out. I'll just kind of randomly cut them out, or I'll do it more by creating visual patterns that I like. So visuals can be an interesting input into music in that way as well. But apart from just seeing the sound, this mode lets you interact directly with the waveform. So by holding down these slots, each of which represents a part of the sound, I can loop small bits of the sound. And you can also hold down more than one note at a time, and it will just loop between the two parts where you've got your fingers held down. You can also reverse a clip as well. So quite nice. It's one of the first softwares, I think, that lets you actually get right into the sound and use touch to directly control it. Let's have a listen to some of the other clips which we've got in here. So that's actually got a guitar and a bass there, I think sampled from a reggae record. And so it's taken it away from a techno track into being more of a nodders reggae style track. If I bring in the vocal again. Totally changed the feel of the track. But then you can take it back again, more in the techno. So I get a big kick out of just mashing up the styles like this, and for me a good tune pack has a lot of diversity in it, and you can take the track in, as I say, different directions. My assistant Anik, he always insists on putting some dubstep kind of squelchy nastiness in there. Now it's not necessary, as I say, to just keep rigidly to the names of the channels. One can put anything into any channel, and I didn't need 8 vocal samples, so put some funk guitar in there. Okay, so that's basically how you can have a lot of fun just instantly mixing clips together. They always be in time, and the more diverse clips you've got, the more you can branch out into different styles. So that's something I definitely want to explore when we get into making clips ourselves for the next stage of the workshop. Let's have a quick look at some other parts of the app. stage, I should just quickly say, all right, so each channel can be turned between drill mode and clip mode. Sometimes you want to be drilling whilst you're swapping clips around as well, so you can mix the modes, or you can switch them all using that button here. Okay. Right, let's have a look at the stabs. So this is a different type of sample. The others are all loops. It works best with loops of 1, 2, 4 or 8 bars. But these are one-shots, more in the nature of percussive samples that you trigger manually at any point that you want. So it's an opportunity to get more freestyle with your remix and your composition. So you have 9 of these samples, and let's have a quick listen to what we've got here.
Centuries, centuries.
These ones I normally do a kick and snare, so you can do some freestyle drumming. And a 9th sample there. Another fun thing is this little pitch bend here. So it's quite good technique to be triggering samples with one hand and then varying the pitch bend with the other like this. Gives it like a pseudo scratching effect, and we should definitely get some scratching samples in there later as well, because when you do a scratch and then put it in and then do this with it, it sounds really good. I don't think there's any in this one, but okay, so that's the stabs. These are DJ effects. Now with effects, stop for a sec. A lot of effects tend to be pretty complicated, and I'm a simple person, so I like simple things, and things which you just punch them, you turn them on, and they do something good. So that's what these are like, and a lot of DJs are quite simple creatures as well, so they like nice simple effects, and these basically don't let you vary the controls at all, but they're all synced to the BPM, so they all tend to sound pretty good. Let's have a quick listen to some of them. Let's just use the drums as an example. Let's have a bit of vocals. Okay, so I'll try them on the vocal track. Reverb. Delay. And this I call a sort of 12ths, like a 3/4 feel dubstep filter effect. Usually sounds better on something continuous. So that's the filter, and then this is a sort of distortion bit crusher. So those effects are either on or off, and like I said, they're good for doing dub versions and just quickly turning things on and off. But you do have a way to have more control over them, and that's with these XY effects, which are basically using the same set of effects but a different interface. So there, the square is controlling the echo and the distortion, and I can distort it right down. Bit crush it to oblivion. And then this one controls the filter. And these effects are controlled, they're routed by those buttons there. So whether a channel is being controlled by the XY effects is controlled by these mode switches here. So I can have it just on the synth, for instance. and the drums remain unaffected. I'd love to show you the tilt thing, but quite often this bit falls out. Let me just try it quickly. Yeah, this is so there's another way that you can interact with the effects. And the nice thing about that is you can turn it on and then go to one of the other pages and be tilting it and doing functions from the other pages as well. So it's another mode of control. Another thing I didn't mention actually is you can skip around the track using cues which are built into it. It's a bit random because you can't say to jump to a particular cue, but the song is basically divided into key points, 8 key points, and you can step forward using these jump keys. Look at there's one other funky fun part of the app, which is this, the Coldcut. So this is a bit like, I call it automatic beat juggling. It's a bit like beat repeat in Ableton or Super Trigger or DB Glitch, if you may have used some of these plugins. They're really good for taking a sample and sort of chopping it into bits and then shuffling them and then handing them back to you in a different style. So amazing what variations the computer comes up with sometimes. It can be a bit random, so it's a bit like riding a crazy wild horse using this sometimes. Let's see what it gives us. Well, these ones on the left, these are called recuts, and they can just be left on. And that's basically taking each of those loops, dividing it into slices, and then kind of chucking them up in the air and putting them back together again to a certain amount of randomness. The higher numbers give more randomness, I think. So that's fairly basic. And then this is a bit more random. It can be quite effective when you just use them on some tracks. So if I take it off the drums, say, okay, so that's the recuts. Now on the right are more interactive versions of the same thing, and these override the recuts. So if I hold one of these down, it takes over from the one on the left. And let's turn it. Let's just put the drums on. Put a fairly simple beat on so you can hear more directly what it does. So there's 6 of these different presets which do different things. That's a reverse. Different types of beat repeat. And these 2 at the top are the kind of quirky random ones where you never quite know what you're going to get. Let's try them on the drums. Triplet feel. They're good when you just kind of drop into them for a couple of seconds. Okay, so with all that fun and jiggery pokery that you can do, you can record everything that you're doing just by hitting the record button. And now that's going to record up to 5 minutes of your jam. And when you're finished, you just hit stop. And then you can upload it to SoundCloud, which is a pretty good facility for letting you just put your tracks up online so people can listen to them. And you can also, I think we're possibly not on the internet here. You can have them public. You can share them with links to Facebook, Twitter, etc., etc. That's all built into the file sharing protocol. So this is a facility which we've just put in. As well as uploading it to SoundCloud, which it can be a bit slow, you can also save it to your documents file here, and then when you plug your iPad or your iPhone into your computer, you can use iTunes file sharing to pull the full quality WAV recording out, and then you can edit it and add further layers, do whatever you want. So both ways you can do further work on anything which you generate in Ninja Jam. Okay, so that is the basis of Ninja Jam. Thank you. And so we'll have a short questions then, and then we'll get on with putting some sounds together and plug them in to Ableton, and then plug them into the app. So that's the plan. Now, just quickly shift back to Ableton. This is the basic template that we use to make packs for Ninja Jam. So basically what it is, it's a collection of loops and one-shots in the right format. They get squirted out into a particular naming convention, and then they get put on the phone. And it's as simple as that. So if we don't have time to complete the whole pack today, we'll still be able to get to a stage where we've made a pack in Ableton, and I can demonstrate how that works. And then afterwards, I'll finish it off and we'll distribute the link to all you guys so you'll be able to get it and download it. I think it would also be nice if we distribute the Ableton set and the samples that we come up with today as well, so people who don't have the app can also have a play with those. So that's the plan.